Hello and welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. Story 1. My last semester at a certain college, I was assaulted by a football player for walking where he was trying to drive. Note he was 325 pounds, I was 120 pounds. While unconscious on the ground, I lived a different life. I met a wonderful young lady. She made my heart skip and my face red. I pursued her for months and dispatched a few jerk boyfriends before I finally won her over. After 2 years we got married, and almost immediately she bore me a daughter. I had a great job, and my wife didn't have to work outside of the house. When my daughter was 2, she, my wife, bore me a son. My son was the joy of my life. I would walk into his room every morning before I left for work and doted on him and my daughter. One day while sitting on the couch, I noticed that the perspective of the lamp was odd, like inverted. It was still in 3D, but just wrong. It was a square lamp base, red with gold trim on 4 legs and a white square shade. I was transfixed. I couldn't look away from it. I stayed up all night staring at it. The next morning I didn't go to work. Something was just not right about that lamp. I stopped eating. I left the couch only to use the bathroom at first. Soon I stopped that too, as I wasn't eating or drinking. I stared at the fucking lamp for 3 days before my wife got really worried. She had someone come and try to talk to me. By this time my cognizance was breaking up and my wife was freaking out. She took the kids to her mother's house just before I had my epiphany. The lamp is not real. The house is not real, my wife, my kids. None of that is real. The last 10 years of my life are not fucking real. The lamp started to grow wider and deeper. It was still inverted dimensions. It took up my entire perspective, and all I could see was red. I heard voices, screams, all kinds of weird noises, and I became aware of pain. A fucking shit ton of pain. The first words I said were, "I'm missing teeth," and opened my eyes. I was laying on my back on the sidewalk surrounded by people that I didn't know. Lots were freaking out. I was completely confused. At some point a cop scooped me up, dragged/walked me across the sidewalk and grass, and threw me face down in the back of a cop car. I was still confused. I was taken to the hospital by the cop. Seems he didn't want to wait for the ambulance to arrive and give CT scans and shit. I went through about 3 years of horrid depression. I was grieving the loss of my wife and children and dealing with the knowledge that they never existed. I was scared that I was going insane, as I would cry myself to sleep hoping I would see her in my dreams. I never have, but sometimes I see my son, usually just a glimpse out of my peripheral vision. He is perpetually 5 years old, and I can never hear what he says. Story 2. This happened about 2 years ago, and I was so blown away I took notes and told my wife about it, so I still have the notes on my phone. My 5-year-old son was pretty typical for his age. Always goofing around, never serious, always working some angle to negotiate treats or buying whatever thing was at the top of his list this week. Kids have a selfish worldview, and that's mostly understandable because they haven't matured yet. So when my son asked me to go for a walk, just the two of us, I immediately laughed and thought, okay, what's he going to ask for? We start walking and I ask, "What's on your mind, buddy?" He said, "Nothing really. I just want to have some time to be with you and be peaceful and be out in nature." Well, okay, this is progress, I thought. Then he said, "I want you to know you're the best dad I've ever had. You really do help me and my sister a lot, and you're really very nice, even though we don't usually tell you. So I just wanted to say thank you for everything, and that I want to be near you always." By this point, the only reason I wasn't completely crying my eyes out is that I thought it was some kind of a joke or lead up to ask for something. This was totally out of character, especially at this age. I managed to croak out something like, "I'm really glad to hear that, and I love you very much." Then we just enjoyed the rest of the walk. It really felt like for a moment I was speaking to a soul who has had several lives. You're the best dad I've ever had, and wanted to speak directly to me instead of play the role of a child. I'm so glad it happened, and it's something I will never forget. Later he went right back to being the same old goofy kid that I love. Story 3. So this actually happened last week. It just took me some time to come to terms with it. I got a phone call from my next door neighbor late in the evening, asking if I can help him move a mattress into his upstairs. His mom is ill and has a big heavy sleep number bed. I of course ran over to help because they're great neighbors. I get over there and his friend, who is also a priest, was there to help. I helped them figure out how to separate the mattress from the bed so we could fit it upstairs. We get it all moved up and back in place when my neighbor asks if I can help them move an armoire upstairs too. I think nothing of it, and we pull it out of his travel trailer and start bringing it up the front stairs of his house. This is where I died. The front stairs are 11 steps. I was on the lower end of the armoire about 6 steps up when my neighbor and his friend lose a handle on the armoire, and it comes crashing down on me, and I fall backwards towards the pavement. I then wake up in my dining room to my phone ringing, and my wife asking me if I'm going to answer the phone. It's my neighbor asking me if I can help move a bed upstairs for his mom. I go over there and meet his priest friend again, as this has been the first time I met him. I say I can help with the bed, but I cannot help with the armoire. My neighbor was like, "How do you know about the armoire?" I then proceeded to tell them I'm pretty sure I just died. I spent the next hour talking with the priest. He had so many questions. My neighbor didn't believe it until I described the upstairs bedroom in perfect detail down to the metal mattress frame on the floor and the intricate headboard leaning against the wall, and I had never been upstairs in their house before. The priest asked me what I saw after I died. I told him I never actually died. Before it happened, I woke up at my dining room table. Story 4. For a few weeks before this, while out driving, I've observed pedestrians standing at the traffic lights who will reach into their pocket and look at their phone as they're walking across the road when the light goes green. Nothing significant or strange about this, just one of those mundane things you notice while going about your day. Today I was driving with my daughter and we stopped at a red light at a crossing, and there was a man standing there. Nothing out of the ordinary, denim jacket, black cap, glasses, around 6 feet 2. I thought I'd try to weird out my young daughter. She's 5, so I knew I was going to blow her damn mind. So I said, "See that man? When the walking man goes green and he starts to walk across, he'll reach into his pocket and pull out his phone and start looking at it. Watch and see." As he walks across, he reaches into his pocket, but then immediately takes his hand out and looks and points right at me with his mouth open, smiling, like a gotcha stance. Of course, my daughter found this absolutely hilarious, and I sat there completely mind blown. I must have sat there in silence looking at him walk across for the next 10 seconds. I drove on and had a look at him as I drove past, and he was smirking/laughing. I've been playing it through my head all day. The windows were up. The radio was on. I wasn't shouting. My voice was not even remotely raised. He must have been about 15 to 20 feet away from me. I can't figure out at all how he could have heard me. It's literally impossible. How did he know I was trying to predict he'd reach into his pocket for his phone? The only even remote possibility I can think of is that he has had the same observation as me and thought I might be thinking the same thing, so just went for it. But realistically, what are even the chances of this? Story 5. To make this brief, my older brother died in 2000. Prior to this, he once was driving me in his Jeep when I was about 10 years old. In the Jeep, he had the song Song 2 by Blur playing in his car, and he was dancing while driving, waving his arms, saying, "Wahoo." I've kept this memory alive by having my license plate as Wahoo. Today I met a random stranger at a hockey game. The hockey game happened to play the same song, and this girl turned to me and said, "My older brother played this one in his Jeep." I was completely confused and thought I heard wrong at first and said, "Say that again, I didn't quite hear you." And she literally repeated it again. She then went on to explain her brother died in 2000, and I asked her what her license plate said, and she said that it says Wahoo and she's from New Hampshire. What are the odds this would happen? Story 6. In 2003, I learned that a school friend had died. A friend of his girlfriend told me about it. He just died in his sleep at 23 years old. I asked if substances were involved, and she said no. She was really sad because they had just gotten engaged. I told myself I would send condolences, but I never did. I remember talking to a mutual friend a few years later, and I got the sense that it was still a really sensitive subject. A couple years ago, I got a friend request from this guy. I didn't think it was real, so ignored it. Today I learned that he's alive. He married the girl he was engaged to, the same one he had died next to. The mutual friend I had spoken to about it now thinks I'm crazy. I just asked him to remember the conversation we had about the death. Story 7. About 30 seconds ago, I was sitting on the couch. As my dog walked by to go sit on her bed we have behind the L part of the sectional. She had something small caught in her throat last night, I think a popcorn shell, so I was paying attention to her breathing just to make sure she got it out. For a few minutes she was breathing fine, and then what sounded like a light snore started happening. This is semi-normal for her, depending on what position she's laying in, so I didn't bother to go over and check on her. That went on for about 5 minutes, until the most disgusting, and to my now realization, terrifying, snore/cough/wheezing sound started happening. I go over to her to make sure she's okay, and the exact moment I looked at her bed the sound stopped mid-breath. and she wasn't there. She was outside with my parents, had been for around 30 minuets. There's no way to get out of the room without walking right past me. I don't know whose dog I saw and what was making that creepy-ass sound 5 feet away from me, but I'm going to be staying outside for the rest of the day and hiring an exorcist. Story 8. I stumbled across this sub today, and I immediately thought of a story that my family and friends still talk about. This happened in 2009, when I was 16 years old. It was the first weekend of summer, and nobody was home when I woke up at around 11 a.m. I grabbed a snack and went down to the basement to watch TV. I had plans to hang out with a friend at 3 p.m. that day. Like I said before, I started watching TV at around 11, knowing I had 4 hours before I was supposed to head over to my friend's house. I had only been watching TV for about 30 minutes when my mom came down the stairs asking me where I'd been all day. I said, "What are you talking about? I've been awake for less than an hour." I look at my watch and see that it's well past 5 in the afternoon. I run upstairs and check my phone to see that I have several missed calls from my friend and my mom. My mom's side of the story is what makes me nauseous when I think about this, even to this day. She was with my little brother at his baseball game from 1 to 3 that day. She and my brother were home when I supposedly woke up and went down to the basement, but neither of them have any memory of even seeing me that morning. When my mom got home at around 3, she checked the entire house for me, including the basement where I had been sitting on the couch watching TV. It's been 10 years, and I still have no idea what happened on that day. It is by far the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me, and although I talk about it with my family like it's a funny little thing that happened, it genuinely chills me to my bones thinking about it. Story 9. A bit of backstory for this one. My little sister has Down syndrome. From my understanding about DS, many people with it are on the autistic spectrum. My sister is considered high-functioning autistic as well as having DS. Okay, here are the stories. Our mom had tons of difficulties with her pregnancy with Diana and had multiple strange occurrences while she was pregnant with her. The main one being that, at around 6 months along in the pregnancy, our mom walked into her bathroom to find the box holding her wedding dress on the floor. That box had been in the attic since we had moved into that house. No one in the house knew how it got there. Mom started having contractions just after that incident and started bleeding. Dad took her to the ER, and after a day of her being in intensive care and having multiple tests done, my parents discovered that Diana has DS. After Mom gets out of the hospital, she sits me and my older sisters down to talk to us about this, telling us that Diana will have an abnormality, her words, and explains to us that she will be different than normal kids. I remember very clearly that everyone but me was crying. I remember saying something along the lines of, "But none of us are normal." Mind you, I was 12 and for sure my family is not very normal. Fast forward. Diana is born premature. I believe she was born at 7 months, but could be off a bit. Has a ton of medical issues and has to have surgery immediately after being born. She was in NICU for the first 2 months of her life. We finally get to bring her home after she recovers. She was the tiniest little thing. By the time Diana was about 6 months old, my parents started doing physical and speech therapy with her, because she wasn't developing the way a normal baby would have been by that age, I guess. I remember we were learning sign language with her until she was about 2 years, because my mom was afraid she wouldn't be verbal. Mom couldn't have been more wrong. Diana started babbling by about 8 months, and she'd always just lay flat on her back and talk to the ceiling, and just giggle like someone was playing with her. Mom always joked that Diana was talking to angels. Fast forward again to when Diana is about 3 or 4 years old. My mom, Diana, and myself are at a little Christmas party at a place for physically and mentally disabled people, where Diana took classes and the rest of us volunteered. The 3 of us are sitting in these pews waiting for Santa Claus to come on stage, so all the kids can go have their photo taken with him. Out of nowhere, Diana stands up and runs away from my mom and me into the crowd. We chase her, and she runs straight toward this older woman we had never met. Diana grabs the woman's leg and starts bawling. My mom and I are apologizing to the woman, saying we don't know what got into her. The woman looks down at Diana and asks her what's wrong. This is where it gets weird. Diana tells her word for word, in the clearest way I had heard her speak, "I'm so sorry that your mommy left you." The woman starts tearing up and tells us that her mother had passed away a couple nights prior after a long battle with cancer. The second time Diana freaked us out. I was visiting with my mom and Diana when she was about 10. Diana starts telling me how she talks to Grandpa all the time. He passed away when she was about 5, and starts telling me that she met Grandpa's wife. Grandpa's wife, our step-grandmother, was still alive at this point, and that's the only grandma Diana ever knew, so I tell her, of course you've met Grandma. She corrects me and says, no, Mommy's Mommy. My mom and I both froze. Our mom's mom passed away when our mom was pregnant with my older sister, meaning none of us had ever met her. So our mom starts asking Diana questions about Grandma. She asks what color was my mommy's hair, and Diana responds, yellow, but not real. Mom goes on to explain to me that Grandma wore wigs because she had been balding after years of battling anorexia, and she's always wore big blonde wigs. So Mom asks Diana, do you know Grandma's name? She says Jeannie, which was in fact our grandmother's name. Diana had never heard about Jeannie. It's a very sore subject to bring up around our mom, so none of us really know much about her. There have been so many other instances of her just knowing things, like when I was in a very abusive relationship that none of my family knew about, and she once called me in the middle of the night, crying hysterically that I needed to leave my house and come home. After that phone call, my fiancé came home drunk and beat the living crap out of me. I left him after that, and honestly can't say I would have had the strength to leave had it not been for that call from my little sister. Story 10. I have 4 kids. I know I have 4 kids, but recently I just feel like there should be another one, but it's missing. When we go out, I head count and get flustered because I can't find the extra one. I have to consciously remind myself there are only 4, but my heart just doesn't believe it. Well, I just put it down as one of those weird feelings and push it aside. Then my parents sent money to my kids. They sent $500. I called them and asked them why they put in so much. They were confused and said that they told me they were sending $100 per kid. I reminded them that I only have 4 kids. They were silent for a moment, then just kind of laughed and said they must be getting old because they were thinking there was 5. Then tonight, my daughter walked into the lounge room. She looked around and said, I know we're all here, but our family feels small. My son agreed. I hadn't said anything to anyone about my feelings lately, because they already think I'm ancient and forgetful at 40. Thanks for reading if you've made it this far. Does anyone else ever have these feelings? Story 11. I'd like to preface this by saying my husband is an electrical engineer and I'm a teacher. We're not crazy people. So back when my husband and I were dating, my husband was in a terrible car crash. His truck hit black ice, and he slid into oncoming traffic. His truck was completely totaled. So was the other truck he hit. The weird thing is though, both he and the other guy were completely fine. Not a scratch on them. All my husband had was a bruise on his knee. The first responders were baffled, as was the towing company and insurance, when they realized no one had died/was severely injured. Fast forward to a few days after the crash, my husband comes over to my apartment. We're having a conversation about a university class we're both in, and he casually asks when I got the flat-screen TV sitting on my dresser. At this point I'm very confused because I've had the little flat screen since I was 13 and had had it the entire year and a bit we'd been dating. I asked him what he's talking about, as I've always had that TV. He told me to quit pulling his leg and asked me what I did with the old tube TV. I had no idea what he was talking about and told him so. He's convinced I had a tube TV. I proceed to get on Facebook and showed him a picture we had taken 2 weeks prior with the TV in the background. It's a flat screen in the picture. My husband goes white like he's seen a ghost and just stares into space for a minute. His eyes started to water. I asked him what's wrong and he said, I swear to God, I'm not crazy. You've had a tube TV since we started dating. It was a tube TV when we took that picture. I brushed it off as his head being rattled from the accident, and he didn't bring it up again. However, anytime we hung out in my room, he'd always look at the TV weird. Fast forward 7 years, my husband and I have been married for a few years and decide that we're ready to be parents. I'm not on birth control, and we decide whatever happens, happens. We're not actively trying, but not preventing it either. So we're on vacation in Italy, wandering around Rome, and I feel like shit. I had had my period the week before, and it was the worst one I had had in my whole life. As we're walking around, I am suffering from back pain, chills, and horrific cramping. I go to the bathroom in a cafe and hurl my guts out, have diarrhea, and realize I'm menstruating heavily. Obviously, I'm weirded out since I had just had my period the week before. I clean myself up, go back to my husband, and tell him I think I need a doctor. I have a pretty high pain tolerance, but this is insane. It's getting to the point I'm having trouble walking, and I'm starting to feel pain in my shoulders. I don't want to ruin our vacation, but I'm starting to really worry. My husband is smarter than me, sees the state I'm in, and says I'm visibly paler than when I went into the bathroom and gets me help. 20 minutes later, I'm on a stretcher and being taken to the hospital. An hour after that, I'm being prepped for emergency surgery as doctor tells me I have a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. I have heavy internal bleeding, and if he doesn't perform surgery, I am going to die. 6 hours later, I wake up very sore and tired. Doctor tells me I'm very lucky, and if I had waited any longer to seek medical attention, I'd be dead. Husband stays with me in the hospital the first night, then gets a hotel for the rest of my stay. A week later, we're cleared to fly home, and I go through a grueling month of healing from the surgery. 2 months after our return, somehow my husband and I get on the topic of fires, and he goes on about the dangers of kitchen fires, and I say, "No need to worry, we're all set with the extinguisher in the closet." He looks at me like I have 3 heads, and asks me what I'm talking about. I remind him about the extinguisher in the front closet, where we keep the coats. We've had it for 3 years. He insisted we buy one when we bought our house. My husband shakes his head, and tells me he has no idea what I'm talking about, and we don't have a fire extinguisher. I remind him about, not only my memories of fighting about if we really needed one, where to put it, buying it from Home Depot, but also installing it to the wall in the closet. He looks at me with confusion, and tells me none of that happened. I get up, go to front closet to show it to him, all the while cursing him for being an asshole for forgetting our 2-week fight about it, and lo and behold, no extinguisher. Not only is there no extinguisher, there's no holes in the wall where I know we installed it. No fresh paint, this wall has never been touched. I insist he's moved it and fixed the wall, and ask why the F he would play such a stupid prank. He continues to insist we've never had one, let alone talked about getting one. This goes on for several minutes. I'm approaching hysterics, telling him to quit playing with me when finally he says, "Now you know how I feel about that TV." We didn't speak about it for a long time. Then after I found this thread, he brought up his theory that perhaps in another timeline/dimension, whatever you want to call it, we both actually died and we reset like a video game and the TV and extinguisher are glitches. I don't know if I agree with him. All I know is that I have never been so rattled in my whole life, and every time I get something out of the closet, I'm overwhelmed with this feeling of wrongness. I know it should be there, but somehow it's just not. I can't explain it. He says he will go to his grave swearing I had a tube TV. Story 12. I was 17 at the time, and me and my dad had just finished our fishing trip, and it was almost midnight, mid-fall. When I was about to get in the car, he told me that he did not want me to sit in the front seat on the ride home. We argued about it for about 5 minutes, and he did not give any good reason to why he did not want me to. I gave up and got in the back seat. It was pitch black outside. When we had been driving on the main road for about 2 minutes, we saw a car driving in our lane. Right as we were about to collide, my dad swerved into the other lane, and so did the car in front of us. I heard my dad say, "I knew it," at the very last second, and then I blacked out. Woke up when police showed up at the scene. They helped me out of the car. I was barely conscious, and don't remember much after that. Only thing that is still a crystal clear memory is that I saw my dad, sitting in the car waving at me with tears in his eyes. When I later asked where my dad was, I was told that he had flown out of the car window and landed only a few feet from the car and passed away later in the ambulance. I was told the man we crashed with died on impact and also had a 17-year-old daughter in the back seat who survived. I still can't believe that this really happened. This was 6 years ago. Story 13. This happened a few months ago. In early January, my wife and I were in the kitchen, prepping lunch and chatting. Our 5-year-old daughter was in the living room, watching TV. No one else in the house. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and the layout of the house allows us to see a bit of the corridor and hallway outside the kitchen door. My wife was cutting up food, and I was sitting behind her. As we talked, she started to turn around to face me but stopped midway, staring at the kitchen door. She froze up completely, and I remember asking, "What is it?" She let out a loud gasp, and then I instinctively looked toward the door as well. I saw a brief glimpse of what seemed like a person turning the corner, towards the living room. It happened very fast, but I was sure I saw someone. I panicked. My immediate thought was, holy fuck, someone broke in, my daughter's alone in the living room. The only thing I thought of doing was grabbing a knife, and yelled at my wife to call the police. I rushed into the corridor and into the living room. In the living room, there was nothing. My kid was just sitting on the couch, watching Bluey. She looked at me and asked, "What's up?" with a confused expression. Mind you, I had a knife in my hand, and probably looked crazy. I tried to play it off, and asked if she saw anyone come in the room. She hadn't, and was clueless about what I was talking about. I searched the living room and the rest of the house. No sign of a break-in, windows closed, and we live on the 3rd floor. If someone had tried to escape that way, they would have fallen really bad. I checked everywhere, wardrobes, behind curtains, the front door. Nothing. No signs of entry, and the front door was totally closed, and we didn't hear anyone come in or anything of the sort. This all happened within maybe 10 minutes. I went back to the kitchen where my wife was crying. She had frozen up and didn't call the cops. I calmed her down. She got scared bad and she couldn't even speak properly. When she calmed down, she explained to me what she saw. I personally only caught a very quick glimpse of the thing turning around the corner. However, my wife says she got a good look at it. She says she saw what looked like a tall woman, dressed in a floral dress and high heels, walking across the corridor. Neither of us heard any sound though. She said the woman stopped when she understood she was seen, looked at my wife in the eyes, and my wife swears the figure looked like our daughter, but older. This happened in the space of seconds, when she first froze up in shock. When my wife gasped, the woman hurried and turned the corner into the living room. I only saw this last part. If I hadn't caught a glimpse of it, I would ask my wife to go into therapy or something. But I know something was there. We never figured out what we saw, but it was definitely the strangest moment of my life, and I know it happened. Wanted to share here. Story 14. I know this story is going to sound weird and crazy, but hear me out. I'm not too familiar with this subreddit, but a friend of mine who's always talking about metaphysics, Twilight Zone, simulation type stuff loves this sub and keeps telling me to post this. In fact, no doubt he'll read this. Hey Zane LOL. Anyways, here's my story. 2 weeks ago, I was about to get ready for a party at 6. Just before I started getting ready, one of my friends messaged me, super excited because a boy she's had a crush on for the last 4 years finally asked her out, and he was coming with her to the party. While I was texting her back, my younger brother walked into my room and asked if I could drive him to his friend's house, which I agreed to do. Then I went to the bathroom to have a shower and do my makeup. So I got in the shower, but when I went to wash my hair I realized that my conditioner was finished. I was pretty ticked off because I'd only bought it a couple of days beforehand, and it's an expensive brand. My younger sister always uses up my things, so I knew she'd used it all. She'd also trashed the bathroom, leaving water everywhere and her dirty towel on the floor. I was pissed off and was about to get out of the shower in order to tell her off and get some more conditioner. But as I went to get out, I realized at the last second that she'd kicked the grippy mat we have at the bottom of our shower tub up. Our shower/tub is super slippery without the grip mat. So as I went to step out, my foot slipped and I fell with my neck down onto the edge of my tub. Time seemed to slow down in my head, and I remember my last thought was, wow, this is how I die. How stupid. But here's the thing, at the moment of impact, I woke up in a start back in my bed. I know it sounds stupid and cheesy, like something from a dumb Netflix show, but there's literally no other way to describe what happened. I was lying in bed right before I got up to shower the first time, but I don't remember falling asleep. And the thing is, I've been a lucid dreamer for the last 5 or so years, and if this was a dream, it was way more vivid than anything I've ever experienced. What weirded me out, though, was that the exact same friend who texted me the first time messaged me after I woke up to tell me that the boy she had a crush on had asked another girl out, and she was pretty bummed about it and didn't want to come to the party. I was weirded out that there was some similarity between that and the dream, but didn't think much of it at first. As I went to reply, my younger brother came in to ask if I would take him to his friend's house. All the blood drained from my face. He just stood in the doorway looking confused and asked me what was wrong. I rushed into the bathroom, feeling like I was losing my fucking mind, and went to check the conditioner bottle. I know this sounds completely crazy, but the bottle was finished just like before, and the grip mat was kicked up. At that point, I went to lie back down in bed and texted my friends to tell them that I wouldn't be going to the party.